Hey there, restless souls and seekers of the strange. Welcome to Shadows and Whispers, where the veil between worlds grows thin and the unknown lurks just beyond the edge of your screen. Tonight, we're delving into 5 bone-chilling tales of cursed objects, each one a gateway to horrors that defy explanation. But before we begin, we need your help to keep the shadows alive. If you're ready to embark on this eerie journey with us, hit that like button. It fuels our channel and keeps the stories coming. Subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a descent into the dark. Every click brings us closer to building a community of thrill seekers and storytellers like you. Now, here's a question to spark some spine-tingling discussion. What's the creepiest object you've ever owned or encountered? A doll with a sinister smile? A mirror that seems to watch you? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experiences inspire our tales and help us craft the nightmares you crave. Whether you're here for the chills, the thrills, or just to unwind with our 8-hour ambient soundscape, featuring the haunting creak of an old house, the distant howl of the wind, and the soft patter of rain, there's something here to pull you into the unknown. So grab your favorite blanket, dim the lights, and prepare to step into the shadows. Whether you're here to relax or to feel your pulse quicken, we've got a story that will leave you questioning what's real and what's waiting just out of sight. Remember, every tale is a door. One side invites you in, the other keeps you wondering if you should have stayed out. Let's begin with our first story. Echoes of the Abyss, Part 1. The first time we heard whispers in the darkness, they seemed nothing more than harmless echoes of an old house settling in the night. My grandmother's attic was a place of dusty allure, cluttered with forgotten relics of the past. Among the oddities, an ornate Ouija board lay hidden beneath a tattered cloth, its lacquered surface gleaming even in the dim light. We were there for a weekend retreat, a chance to escape mundane realities and relive childhood curiosities. Sarah, Michael, and I, each with our own motives, arranged the attic to mimic a seance from stories long told. Candles flickered, their tiny flames waging a quiet battle against the encroaching shadows. The storm outside added to the ambiance, the wind howling a mournful tune through the crevices of the old house. "It's just a game," I assured them with forced confidence, masking the twinge of apprehension growing beneath my skin. Though part of me longed for something more, an answer from beyond, I couldn't quite shake off the chill of unease. As we placed our fingers on the planchette, a strange electric tension settled over us. The atmosphere shifted, charged with anticipation. Our quiet laughter faded, replaced by a silence so thick it was almost tangible. Sarah was the first to speak, her voice tinged with both excitement and a touch of fear. "Is anyone here with us?" For a moment, nothing happened. But then, ever so slightly, the planchette quivered beneath our touch. With bated breath, we watched as it began to glide across the board, spelling out a single ominous name: Azrael. Our surprise quickly turned to skepticism. Michael chuckled nervously, claiming it must be one of us pushing it, but his attempt to dispel the tension only heightened the eeriness engulfing the room. "Let's ask something else," he challenged, defiance coloring his words. Taking up the gauntlet, we focused our collective thoughts and tried once more. "Why are you here?" came Sarah's trembling question. The planchette stilled, then moved deliberately across the board, promises made. I felt an unsettling tug at my insides, something in the phrase resonating deeply and darkly within me. Despite the storm brewing outside and within, I couldn't help but wonder what those promises were, and what ethereal pact we had unwittingly stumbled upon. Echoes of the Abyss, Part 2. The storm outside intensified, rattling the window panes as if determined to join our unearthly communication. Inside, tension stretched taut, each of us exchanging guarded glances. What started as a game now bore the weight of something sinister. It was my turn to speak, my voice barely a whisper over the tumult of wind and rain. "What promises?" In a dreadful dance, the planchette swept across the board. Secrets must come unveiled. The air went cold, as if the very essence of the room had shifted. There was something deeply unsettling about the way those words lingered. I couldn't help but wonder what secrets Azrael meant and whose they might be. A shadow flickered over Sarah's face, her previous bravado crumbling into visible fear. Her hand trembled above the planchette. "This is getting weird," she muttered, a quiver in her voice betraying her unease. And then, suddenly, the lights overhead flickered, plunging us into a momentary gloom. In the oppressive dark, I heard the quietest of breaths, a whisper not meant for our ears. It was Sarah who stifled a scream, her knuckles white against the candlelight. "Did you hear that?" she asked, voice strained to breaking. Before we could respond, the board convulsed again. "Betrayal close by," it declared with chilling certainty. The words sent a shiver down my spine, and Michael, normally so composed, faltered. His eyes darted between us, suspicion suddenly sowed and taking root. What did it mean? And how did this spirit know the fractures buried in our hearts? The planchette stilled, and in the silence that followed, every creak, every groan of the wind seemed amplified to unbearable proportions. We waited, holding our breath as if silence itself were a pact. "Are we safe?" Sarah asked, breaking the tension. Once more, the board began its haunted ballet, gliding unbidden to spell a single fateful word: never. Fear unfurled, unabated and raw, as the implications of Azrael's message settled upon us. This was no mere specter, no passing wraith. Azrael was intent on unearthing secrets that should have remained buried, stoking the embers of deceit yet unrevealed. Echoes of the Abyss, Part 3. The unsettling weight of Azrael's words hung heavy over us. The once cozy attic now felt like a conspirator, its shadows creeping closer with each flicker of candlelight. Desperation clawed at my gut, fueled by the grim ambiguity of never being safe. I steeled myself, pushing fear aside as I addressed the malevolent spirit. "What do you want?" My voice was a fragile thread, taut and hoping for any answer that might offer an escape. The planchette slid again, spelling out a chilling command: bound forever. A dreadful realization swept through me. This was no fleeting encounter. Azrael intended to ensnare us in its dark machinations. I looked at Sarah and Michael, seeing their fear mirrored in my own eyes. I couldn't let this continue. "Enough!" I cried, seizing the board in determined defiance. "You've had your fun, Azrael. No more!" In an act of desperate finality, I hurled the board to the ground. It shattered, splintering with a sound that strangely echoed like laughter, reverberating through the attic with cruel mirth. As the pieces of the board lay scattered, a disquieting silence followed, filled only by the rhythmic beat of my heart. I felt a brief flicker of triumph. Hadn't we severed its grasp? Yet even as hope dared to take root, a whisper slithered through my mind, unmistakable and filled with dark promise. "You cannot escape." I froze, the echo of those words reverberating within, a sinister resonance that suggested this nightmare was far from over. The shattered board might lie in ruins, but Azrael's presence lingered, watching, waiting. The wind's howl seemed to carry a warning, a reminder that boundaries, once crossed, are rarely mended. We huddled together there, bound by the shared ordeal and the persistent dread that the whisper in the shadows would never truly leave us. The storm outside dwindled, but within our hearts, a tempest raged on, a chilling reminder that some doors once opened remained forever ajar. As dawn's light broke the horizon, its warmth did little to console the cold truth. We were not alone. Azrael's shadow would follow, a specter of our own making. If you've made it this far, the shadows have already begun to close in. Subscribe now to ensure you never miss a terrifying tale. And if you dare, hit the thanks button to buy me a cup of midnight brew. Your support keeps the nightmares flowing. Now, brace yourself for our next story. The unease settled in the pit of my stomach long before we set foot in the cabin. Nestled deep within the whispering pines, its wooden facade seemed to lurk beneath a canopy of shadows even in the bright of day. Ethan and Jamie, my closest friends, were bustling behind me, their voices mingling with the crunchy sound of leaves underfoot. "Are you sure about this place, Rick?" Jamie asked, adjusting her scarf against the evening chill. Her eyes, though warm, carried the gleam of curiosity, forever seeking the unknown. "It was cheap and available," I replied, shrugging. "Besides, I thought we could use a break from the mundanity of life." As night fell, the cabin's interior glowed softly, our lanterns casting golden halos upon the walls. Fragrant wood smoke twisted lazily through the room as we gathered around the hearth, warmth cocooning us from the cool autumn air. Ethan, always one for theatrics, disappeared into the attic and returned in triumphant glee, carrying a dust-covered board in his hands. "Oh, not this," I groaned, understanding immediately where his excitement led. Ever the skeptic, I was reluctant to entertain his antics with the supernatural. Jamie, however, giggled with interest. "An actual Ouija board? Didn't know you were keeping ancestors' relics, Rick." "Must have belonged to the previous owners," I muttered, trying to hide my unease. "Probably a cheap keepsake." Despite my reservations, the allure of mystery proved too tempting. As Ethan dusted off the board and set it before us, an electric charge seemed to permeate the air within the room. What began in youthful folly steadily transformed into something more serious as shadows lengthened and laughter faded. With hesitant fingers, we each touched the planchette. The room grew silent, the only sound the rhythmic crackling of the fire. Our entreaties to the unknown started playfully, but soon turned earnest. Then it happened. The board spelled out, "Not alone." The room's atmosphere changed instantly. What was lighthearted now felt like a trap sprung shut. Ethan's boisterous bravado settled into cautious intrigue, while Jamie's eyes grew wide with palpable concern. I felt a shiver race through me, as though we had poked the veil with carelessness and had drawn forth something we couldn't understand. I tried to counsel myself that it was just us moving the planchette subconsciously, but the strange tension binding us together in that moment seemed to whisper otherwise. We decided to continue, their initial excitement now replaced with silent curiosity and perhaps a bit of fear. The board spelled out again, "Danger near." That night, as I slept uneasily, nightmares twisted their way through the corners of my mind with images of the board and words etched in fire. A chill pierced my dreams, leaving cold sweat as my only reality when I awoke. Little did I know, the real threat had just begun its relentless quest to unravel us from within. Sleep brought no respite. The nightmarish visions returned with cruel consistency, racing through my mind with images that were as vivid as they were terrifying. Shadows writhed and sighed just out of sight, and every corner of my room seemed to pulse with some unseen presence. Each time I awoke, the same words haunted me, "Not alone." With little choice, I rallied Ethan and Jamie back to the cabin. Desperation shadowed my eyes, and as they followed my lead out of friendship or perhaps a shared fear, our unease deepened. We had to confront whatever had been stirred that night, or risk being forever haunted by its unknown motives. Once again, we found ourselves circled around the Ouija board, its innocuous appearance belying the tumult it had caused. As the planchette began its ominous dance, a chill slithered through the room, coiling around us like a snake. To my horror, the board spelled out, "Ethan tethered." Silence sat heavy in the air, our shared confusion mingling with disbelief. Ethan balked, his face a mask of incredulity, tempered with a hint of fear. "These things don't just happen," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "There's more to this than we know." Ethan shifted uncomfortably, but it was Jamie who broke the tense quiet. You didn't do something, did you?" Her question hung in the air, impossible to take back. When Ethan admitted to having dabbled with the board previously, using it as a conduit to speak with the unknown, the magnitude of our predicament crystallized. His recklessness had bound a vengeful spirit to his will, a bond that now threatened us all. In that moment, the cabin erupted into chaos. Windows banged as if beaten by angry fists, the floorboards groaned beneath the weight of an unseen force, and darkness rushed in, blotting out the feeble glow of our lantern. Instinctively, we huddled closer, grasping what warmth and courage we could find. The entity, feeding on our collective panic, seemed to taunt us with every creak and whisper it conjured from the air. "I didn't think," Ethan stammered, but his words vanished in the cacophony of our growing paranoia. Secrets and accusations surfaced. Each word spoken was another log on our fear's fire. The board, as if sensing our turmoil, offered one last cryptic message. "Free be the one." With trembling hands, Jamie guided us to calm, urging us to remember the importance of unity in facing the unknown. It would be our strength, and no board or spirit could divide. We were left to piece together the remnants of our courage and resolve to break the malevolent bond before it claimed more than just our peace. The night outside was a vast indigo expanse, peppered with stars that mocked our helplessness. We stood outside the cabin, the very ground beneath our feet imbued with the unsettling energy of the land. Focused on breaking the spectral tether that held us captive, we gathered elements that tethered us to life, old photographs, heirlooms from our pockets, and the Ouija board itself as a conduit. Encircled beneath the open sky, we set our makeshift altar on the ground. A chill breeze tangled through the trees, whispering secrets only the wind could hear. As Jamie murmured a plea for peace, we ignited the memories and relics. Flames danced high into the night, casting ephemeral shadows around us. At that moment, the board served as both medium and message, offering its final decree: sever the pact. I felt a surge of determination course through me. With each of us holding a corner of the board, our unity began to sap the spirit's strength. We wove tendrils of memory and bond, tangible yet ethereal, sealing the space between worlds. Fear receded to be replaced by resolve. The apparition tethered to Ethan loosened its grip, shrieking its dissatisfaction with the ceasing wind. Whether from our courage or desperation, the spirit retreated, its cold fingers slipping back to whatever spectral dimension it came from. The tremors it caused in our hearts slowly ebbed, leaving only echoes. Dawn's light spilled over the horizon, kissing our weary forms with its warming embrace. Left within its radiant glow were the remnants of camaraderie, strained but alive. In parting, the board left us with an unexpected message: remember me. The experience had altered us irrevocably. Though the entity was gone, its teachings lingered in the newfound depths of my consciousness. We dispersed with many words unspoken, a reminder that in the light of the finite, we must face all dilemmas with understanding. Ethan turned his back, walking first, a shadow of the man who sought answers with reckless abandon, while Jamie and I exchanged a nod, an unspoken promise of connection and healing. The remains of the board lay behind us, a relic, waiting for its turn to be forgotten. Back from the cabin, and the memory of the spirit was yet vivid, pervasive as shadows cast by a low sun. But from that darkness, threads of strength emerged, our openness to both science and belief combining to shield us from the unknown. The message of "remember me" became etched in my waking world, a reminder to value the unseen, the ethereal currents that weave through the fabric of our lives as we navigate true connections in the vast unknown universe. In the shadows of my family's old Victorian house, amid the flickering dance of candlelight, we huddled around the Ouija board. The air was pregnant with a tension that belied our laughter, a thin veneer masking the unease that roiled underneath. Rain pelted against the window panes, a fitting soundtrack for the night's chilling unfolding. "Let's see if Grandma had some secrets," Jen announced, a smirk playing at her lips, her fingers already resting lightly on the planchette. She was the instigator, always pressing through the mundane into realms unknown. Oliver and I exchanged a glance, part curiosity, part trepidation before joining in, our fingers hovering as if testing the waters of an icy stream. Eager for adventure or perhaps validation, we began timidly, questions of love, fortune, and other frivolities intended to provoke whatever spirit might linger in that old house. Yet, as we laughed and nudged at each other, the interior atmosphere seemed to shift, growing thicker, as if the walls themselves leaned in to listen. It was then that the board spelled out its first clear phrase: "I am Shade." Silence followed, our eyes fixed on the board, adrenaline pulsing as disbelief fell away to reveal something much darker. "All right, Shade," Jen challenged, her voice dipped in bravado. "What do you want?" The planchette began to move again, this time more forceful, a predatory glide. The board spelled, "Do not forget." A shiver trailed down my spine. What was it we weren't supposed to forget? The weight of an unfamiliar déjà vu settled heavily within me, like a misplaced memory almost reconnected. Jen, undeterred, demanded more answers, the bold streak in her refusing to back down. "What are you talking about?" Oliver muttered as he leaned in, his analytical mind searching for logic amid the irrational. The board responded swiftly in stark clarity: "Debt unpaid." A quiet fear slipped through the room like a sudden draft, coiling around us with a cold, inexorable grip. The candles flickered, and a gust swept through, extinguishing one as if to punctuate the message with an unsettling finality. Dread seeped into us, thickening the air with unspoken terror. What debt was this? Unease prickled at the edges of my mind like ice, whispering of things forgotten, or perhaps deliberately buried. We pushed back from the table, the light-hearted intrigue of exploration now overtaken by a sobering terror, a haunting glimpse into a world I'd never given credence. How deeply had I underestimated the past encased in these walls? But it was only the beginning. That night was not just a game with childhood fears, but an unfurling of shadows nurturing secrets deeper than history itself. Unseen eyes seemed to watch from every corner, and with that, I knew there would be no going back to the dismissive ease we once held. The board lay silent now, but the echoed warnings of shade remained. It would not let us forget whatever unspeakable debt lingered just beyond memory's reach. As the days slipped into nights touched by shade's menacing presence, a chilling disquiet settled into my bones. Mornings brought little solace as my suspicions grew. Some link tethered shade to the depths of my family's forgotten legacy. We needed answers. This quest for truth led Jen and me first to the shadows of the aged attic, where dust and time had conspired to obscure the remnants of history. Climbing the narrow staircase was akin to climbing into another world, one separated entirely from the life beating below. An acrid smell lingered, mingled with the must of old wood, as boxes stacked like sentinels waited, brimming with ancient secrets. "Look at this," Jen whispered, pulling out a brittle stack of letters yellowed by the years. Her eyes darted over script, penned in the swirling elegance of another era. "These names, they're familiar, aren't they?" Her voice echoed my own disbelief as I leaned over, deciphering the faded ink with mounting horror. The letters detailed bartered promises and binding oaths, pacts seemingly woven into the fibers of my own lineage. But it wasn't until Oliver joined us, unveiling a crumbling journal from a dusty crate, that the gravity of our intrigue took clear form. "Listen to this," Oliver said, eyes wide with the wonder of discovery mingled with fear. "It mentions an agreement, a guardian bound to protect in exchange for loyalty. That name, Shade, it's intertwined with protection, yet something must have fractured it." Confusion swirled with each fragile page turned. The deeper we delved, the more Shade's demands made sense. A continuation of ancestral obligations long forsaken and obscured by time's relentless passage. Determination mounted within me. Surely there was a way to confront this entity, to reconcile the broken threads of history marked upon my blood. Such convictions led us to the heart of that eerie estate, the mirror-draped room where ethereal reflections told truths and fears unspoken. It was here, amidst eerily silent reverence, I faced the spectral presence of Shade, a judge eternal, keeper of forgotten cries. I understood now that Shade was much more than an unseen menace. It was a manifestation of vignettes lost to time, stories my family failed to honor. I stared into the mirror, its cold surface morphing under specter touch to reveal the layered visage of Shade, a shivering presence that both was and wasn't myself. The ghostly images brought forth remembrances of vows etched in the echoes of those who came before me. It was then Shade spoke, though not in words but feelings, reverberating seizure-like in my heart, its essence an impenetrable sway of truths unfurling. In that stark realization, I swear I could almost hear the cries of my ancestors, a chorus beseeching fulfillment of promises abandoned. In that unsettling standoff, I understood the reconnection demanded only one thing: the acceptance to atone, to remember, and most chillingly, to acknowledge Shade as both guide and guardian, vengeful in unmet duty, yet loyal still. The biting air within the room seemed to redouble its grip as I voiced the pledge to honor my line's faltered commitment. With words tinged in past prevailing nebulous might, a silent truce descended upon us. Shade's presence lessened its immediate demand but lingered with foreboding caution. In the stillness following this revelation, clarity chilled my veins. Our lives were ever more interwoven with spectral law, reflections of oaths transformed through whispered shadows and ancestral mirage. As dawn crept into the corners of the house, its light a defiant whisper against the clinging gloom, I felt both the weight and relief of a burden shared. The pact, renewed in spectral silence, had seemingly lifted the immediate threat, but its shadow lurked with watchful patience, reminding me of obligations far from fulfilled. Jen and Oliver watched me with a mix of relief and concern, their expressions shadowed by an understanding of our bond, now sealed and shrouded in an ethereal trench. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the air crisp, as if all that night's turmoil had been washed clean, at least for now. Yet I knew that shade hadn't departed completely. Its essence was stitched into the tapestry of our family's fabric, meant to be honored but never again forgotten. Its resting presence would always linger, a soulful guardian of past, present, and uncharted future. Later, in the diffused glow of twilight, we gathered in the family room to unpack the remnants of our harrowing experience. Determined not to let this night of revelations devolve into the brevity of forgotten tales, we shared our voyage thoughts with a solemn solidarity. "I still can't believe this," Oliver mused, voice heavy with incredulity. "Do you think it will ever really be over?" I pondered his question deeply. My answer came amid the echoes of memory and new knowledge, binding past admonishments to wisdom born of acceptance. "Maybe not entirely," I conceded, "but that's not the point anymore. We've acknowledged what was left undone. It's become a part of us, a whisper of vigilance." As if summoned by our shared resolution, a calm descended in the room. Birds began their evening song, and the world seemingly turned on as usual, overlaid with views both haunt and hallowed. The house, somehow gentler but no less mysterious, held its breath in unison with us. Despite the peace of daylight, I knew that flickers of invisible eyes might always remain, a testament to promises made to be remembered rather than feared. Together, we faced this resolute truth, knowing that life moves forward not in escalation of terrors, but in knowing that the past, a mirror to ourselves, is neither friend nor foe, but merely a keeper, simply awaiting resolution. In this shared understanding, we found solace staring into the accursed board that brought us here. It lay still now, a silent artifact of our shared amends. As I gazed upon its stillness, my thoughts carved a new intent. None shall forget this balance bound in time, a living remembrance of a wild night's revelation whispered amidst the shadows. With echoes of past debts released into memory's pause, the house breathing in a mellifluous harmony alongside our resounding resolve, the Ouija board specter finally contained. Our new dawn serves as a promise met, instilling vigilance for the shadow reminders that life, tethered by unseen hands, remains our most notched of glories. Through lingering shadows we carried on, ever aware of the sacred unbroken chain binding us, as we embrace tomorrow's unknown tapestry of light and shadow entwined. When echoes of the forgotten whisper through night shadows, what truth hides in silence? It started with a nightmare. I found myself once again in a darkened attic from my adolescence, surrounded by echoes of laughter and chills of forgotten fears. Outside, the wind howled as it clawed at the windows, but what gripped me was not the storm beyond, but the silence inside. A presence, impossible, invisible, traced its form along whispers in the dark. "You won't forget," it promised. I awoke drenched in sweat, an unshakable dread pressing down upon me. After dismissing it as stress, a curious convergence of events rekindled my apprehension. Emily texted me out of the blue about unsettling experiences she couldn't quite articulate. Marcus, too, hinted at shadows he felt as much as heard. These confessions drew me in despite my skepticism. We met at the local cafe, its warm lights casting a comforting glow against the early autumn chill. Emily sat across from me, eyes wide and earnest. Marcus leaned back in his chair, arms crossed in an uncertain embrace. "Have you felt it too?" Emily asked, her voice a mix of trepidation and intrigue. Marcus nodded. "Something's not right. Shadows, whispers, they're familiar. Remember the attic?" The attic. The night we'd gathered, flush with daredevil excitement, to play with the Ouija board. It had seemed harmless, nothing more than a childhood thrill. "Do you think it's related?" I found myself asking, my voice betraying a curiosity I wasn't ready to admit to. We decided to return, not just to reminisce, but to unravel the truth behind the whispers binding us together once more. The attic felt smaller than I remembered, its air thick with dust and secrets. Shafts of afternoon light slipped through gabled windows, illuminating the forgotten tokens of our youth. The Ouija board lay at the heart of it all, dust-covered and silent, a relic of the past waiting to speak again. We didn't take it seriously, Marcus admitted, brushing dust from the board. Maybe we should have. Emily approached with cautious reverence, her fingers trailing over the planchette. She met my gaze. We need to reclaim what we've forgotten. As we gathered around it once more, the board seemed to pulse with an energy that dared us to uncover the unknown, promising truths we'd long buried in the shadows. The library was unearthly quiet. Dust hung in the shafts of light, piercing through high, arched windows, making the air feel tangible. Rows of books stood like sentinels, guarding their secrets. Emily and Marcus pored through faded manuscripts and brittle scrolls as I scanned shelf after shelf. Words like pact, covenant, and soul seemed to leap off the pages, weaving an intricate web of dread around us. "There!" Emily exclaimed, running a finger along an ancient tome. It mentioned something about spirits binding to the living through a board, giving them power until a pact is fulfilled. Marcus shook his head in disbelief, a frown etched on his face. Does this mean we're bound to it, or it to us? My skepticism, once a shield, now betrayed me. In its place was an unsettling acceptance of possibilities. We must have agreed to something unknowingly. We need to find out precisely what. But as we sifted through the library's knowledge, the supernatural occurrences surged. At night, our homes became vessels of unrest. Objects moved of their own volition, lights flickered without cause, and an all-enveloping whisper slithered through the halls. One night, as darkness loomed outside, my living room chandelier swayed violently, its usual gentle flicker erupting into wild oscillations. Unexplainable shadows cavorted across the walls, and instinctively, I knew they watched me. It was as if the spirit demanded attention, clamoring for me to remember. The next morning we convened, shadows under our eyes no longer just from lack of sleep. "We can't keep this up," Marcus said, a protective edge to his voice. "It's getting worse. Maybe it's not just about what we did, it's about what one of us might still be doing," I suggested. Could one of us be keeping it going? It was unthinkable, yet before long, whispers of suspicion interwove with those of the spirit. Emily and Marcus exchanged glances, then Emily concluded, "We need to confront it, and ourselves." With our resolve strengthened, we agreed to confront the spirit on the summer solstice, when its power would peak. Still, the unspoken fear remained. Had someone set this into motion knowingly? And if so, why? The night of the summer solstice wrapped the world in an eerie calm, its air electrified with anticipation. We ascended into the attic, our breaths misting into the night, the board at the center of our intentions. As I set down the planchette, a chill curled through my spine, the whispers now an insistent chorus demanding resolution. Candles flickered, casting elongated shadows that pulsed with our trepidation. Settling around the board, our fingers barely brushed the planchette. "We demand answers," Marcus spoke aloud, his voice a tight rope between defiance and fear. The board responded, the planchette scraping across its surface to spell with heavy certainty, "The pact bound." The revelation sharpened our collective resolve. "How do we end this?" Emily whispered, her eyes darting to the moving planchette. It paused, the air growing dense before continuing. What was promised can be broken with truth. Realization dawned. Truth was our key. Between us lay a betrayal long shrouded. As I turned to Emily and Marcus, shadows flickered across faces once familiar. Doubt clawed at my insides. This had to come from within our circle. Marcus froze, guilt clouding his eyes. "I didn't mean for it to turn out like this," he admitted, his voice cracking. He had sought forbidden knowledge, only half believing it would come to fruition, but it had bound us all. "You did this?" Emily's voice broke, reflecting the crack in our unity. "I thought it was just a game, until it wasn't." The planchette flitted swiftly before stopping with the finality of a judge's gavel. "Remember." A rush of memories and sensations surged through us, moments layered with the weight of the entity's whispered promises. Faced with Marcus's confession, we realized that breaking the bond required unanimity, a collective confrontation of truth. We bashed through the guilt, pledging forgiveness and release, determined to free ourselves from this spectral contract. With our agreement affirmed, the room swelled with a release of pent-up energy. The planchette moved one last time, the board displaying, "You are released." As the spirit's lingering presence dissipated, the attic hushed, shadows retreating into the recesses of memory. We stood, unburdened yet weary, our breath synchronized in relief. Leaving the attic, the summer dawn crept into the sky, painting it in hues of new beginnings. We were forever altered, carrying with us the sobering knowledge of what we had breached, a reminder that some doors, once opened, are best left unfathomed. As we parted ways, a quiet understanding lay between us, a testament bound in unspoken vows. The past would not so easily be left behind, but we walked into the future aware, forever wary of the shadows that we now knew danced beyond the edge of perception. Part 1. Growing up, I'd always been the kind of person who needed to see to believe, never allowing ghost stories to worm their way into my logical mind. It was on a chilly autumn evening that everything I thought I understood about reality was shattered. We gathered in my dimly lit living room, the cool wind outside a stark contrast to the thick, warm ambiance within. Lisa, Mark, and a few others from our college days had come over for what was supposed to be a casual evening. The aroma of vanilla candles mixed with the scent of musk, setting an oddly contrasting mood. Someone suggested a game from our childhood, a Ouija board session. I laughed, initially dismissing it as a fool's errand, but perhaps born out of some perverse curiosity or the need to prove my friends wrong, I agreed. We sat in a makeshift circle, the candlelight flickering against our earnest expressions and the silence embracing us like a thick fog. The planchette felt cool under our hesitant fingertips, a stark reminder of our skeptical entanglement. We started lightly, asking if there were any spirits willing to speak. For a moment, nothing happened, and the tension eased with jokes and laughter. Our brief levity was shattered when the planchette began to move. Skepticism took a back seat as we watched it spell out, "Hello." Lisa gasped, and Mark quirked an eyebrow in bemusement. I narrowed my eyes, suspecting trickery. It had to be one of them, but curiosity gnawed at my insides. "Who are you?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. The planchette slid across the board with a deliberate flight, spelling sister. Goosebumps prickled along my skin. The air felt thicker, charged with an unfamiliar electricity. My heart pounded, yet I fought to maintain my composure among my peers. "Emily?" My voice was barely a whisper. "Yes," the board replied simply. As our eve deepened into the night, the messages continued. They were intimate, weaving details that cut deep into the reservoir of my memory. My friends grew silent, the initial amusement dissolving into a shared unease. Then, something incredible, something impossible began to happen. The board spelled out confessions, little secrets Emily and I had shared long ago, things only she would know. The soft glow of candlelight flickered ominously, accompanying this revelation that rattled the confines of my skepticism. "Miss you," the board spelled finally, leaving me with an aching emptiness akin to that which had lingered since her passing. It was a message both comforting and terrifying in its clarity. Was it Emily? Had I truly opened a doorway to communion with her, or was it something else masquerading behind her warmth? That night marked a cruel dance with shadows, a newly peaked obsession that cast an unfamiliar darkness over the remnants of my logical world. Ensconced in this eerie episode lay the unsettling truth. The Ouija board was no longer a mere game. It had become a vessel, one that whispered of realms and realities that defied my every rational thought. The days following that night saw me drawn unrelentingly back to the board. Its lure was insidious, a siren call that silenced doubts with a tantalizing promise of answers. My friends could see the change in me, my obsession creeping into every corner of my existence. One particularly grim evening, I sat alone, my companions having grown wary of my newfound fixation, caressing the edges of the board as if it were a cherished artifact. The candles burned low, their wax pooling softly as the shadows it cast morphed into terrifying specters of doubt. "Are you still there?" I asked, feeling the weight of my solitude around me. The planchette moved with unsettling ease. Yes. This confirmation, instead of reassuring, now sent a frigid chill down my spine. Eager and desperate, I asked, "Why are you here?" "Save you," the board spelled, leaving me craving both clarity and reprieve. But the following messages took on an inexplicable darkness. whispering of deceit and danger among my friends. "Beware," it cautioned. "Mark lies." My heart clenched. Was this some part of the spirit's influence, the part seeking to isolate me from those I trusted most? I was alone in this unnerving odyssey, my foundation crumbling under fear and paranoia. That particular revelation pried me into myself, instigating a rift that warped our bonds. Lisa noticed my growing estrangement and confronted me, trying to shake my focus from the malevolent lure that had ensnared my mind. "Daniel, you need to stop this before it consumes you," she urged me, her eyes full of concern. My silence met her words, my mind frenzied with the chaos between illusion and truth. Desperation clawed at my chest as I resolved to converse with the spirit one last time, perhaps for closure, or perhaps to uncover the root of this evil unraveling within me. Setting up once more, the atmosphere was darker than before, heavy with impending confrontation. The wind howled, intertwining with the troubled cadence of my thoughts. I inhaled deeply, urging the board for answers. "What do you want?" "You," it replied, the word an eerie echo resonating within me. The menacing response hung in the air like stagnant breath. Suddenly, the temperature dropped sharply, and the candles flickered violently before plunging the room into an oppressive gloom. Unsettled, I felt a chill unfurling from within, freezing my convictions and drenching the room in cold terror. The shadows around me felt alive, encroaching my world in dark tendrils that hilariously defied my understanding. Despair twisted alongside dread, leaving me marooned in a haunting reality where the board no longer felt like just a game. Was my sister's presence real, or something malicious hell-bent on wounding the fragmented remnants of my belief? As the night closed in, so too did the isolation, a realization that whatever I had invited into my life refused to release its grip. I was retracing the steps of the lost, weaving deeper into a truth that threatened to unravel me. The answers I sought led only to darkness, a quagmire of doubt and danger that altered the very essence of who I believed myself to be, and beneath the gloom lay the lingering echoes. You. Veil of shadows. The following days descended like a storm, laden with an unease that danced just beyond the edge of every shadow. Despite the horror etched into my very bones, the Ouija board lay untouched in my room, a haunting reminder of both curiosity and fear that intertwined my days and nights. But my peace was short-lived. In my slumber, whispers invaded, the cold voice from the darkness eclipsing the peace of sleep. I awoke in a daze, ensnared by the memory of the board spelling out a persistent refrain, "You." Desperation won over prudence, compelling me to confront the truth I had desperately evaded. That night, with both trepidation and resolve, I sat before the Ouija board once more, its familiar chill beckoning my touch. "Why won't you leave me alone?" I asked, the words a frigid plea. "Never," it pronounced, echoing my deepest fears. It was then that reality slipped, plunging me into a sickening vertigo where my surroundings warped, the quirks of my existence melding and disintegrating in horrific clarity. In the resulting quiet, something shifted within, a macabre album replaying memories I could not recall, leaving shadows painted in my mind. The board's presence lingered, but so too did an unveiled understanding of the malevolence that rested just beneath. "What will stop you?" I forced the question, hands heavy on the planchette. "Surrender," it narratively commanded, the finality chilling me to the core. Hours drifted by as I was poised between temptation and revelation, lost amid the tumult where destiny seemed not mine to hold. Sunlight threatened the darkness, but could not chase it away, lodging reminders of my transgressions against reality. Sometime past the noisy silence, Lisa's gentle voice broke through. She had arrived unprompted, but her timing impeccable, an anchor back to the present world I had, subjugated to my obsession. There was a comfort in her presence. We sat, her curiosity tempered with caution. Her eyes pried open the truth I struggled to hide, unraveling the unsaid, tethering me to horror. "I don't have the answers," I confessed, my voice fragile. "You're stronger than this," she replied, resolve strong and unwavering. In her words lay hope that flickered against the encroaching dark. She offered belief in a world I could not see, the same belief that firmly denied the shadows the satisfaction of claiming my will. Sitting there with Lisa, realization dawned. It wasn't just about strength, but choice. The curious echo of the Ouija board and its haunting whispers lingered, their resonance a siren wailing against my reasoning. It was up to me to surrender not to them, but to a truth that accepted I need not understand everything to break free. With Lisa beside me, I picked up the board one last time. My heart pounded, my resolve firm. We watched as the candles burnt down to echoes, and the shadows that once clawed ferociously at my sanity coalesced into nothing more than memories. Whether or not my sister had truly spoken from beyond, I realized was less important than the bonds of the living world renewed and strengthened beside me. The weight of the darkness loosened slightly that night, leaving behind a new understanding, a rebirth. And though the whispers of the void lingered, they no longer held the power to sway the foundations of my belief. As the dawn snuck upon us, the first light brought with it the chance to transcend this shadowed horizon, to forge ahead with a newfound fortitude. Thus, the board retired to its rest, a relic of its own time. The darkness remained, watching but no longer threatening, as I breathed deep the morning air, carrying remnants of the night's ordeal into the realm of the past. A part of me forever changed, but forging forward nonetheless.